Act 1. On the defensive. For much of this war, Ukraine's armed forces fought with their backs against the wall. Every day was a test of endurance. Russian aggression came in endless forms, drone swarms buzzing in by the dozen, cruise missiles raining down on power plants, bridges, and neighborhoods, waves of armored assaults hammering at fortified trenches. Ukraine's defenders dug in deep, clinging to their ground while absorbing punishment few modern armies have ever faced. And yet, slowly the tide began to shift. Ukraine was tired of just holding the line. It wanted to hit back, hard. And the weapon it chose to do that? Missiles. Act 2. Breaking with Russia. To understand how remarkable Ukraine's missile story is, we need to rewind. Like many post-Soviet states, Ukraine inherited missile factories, design bureaus, and engineers from the USSR. But after 1991, it was still tied to Russia for parts, trade, and funding. That dependence collapsed in 2014 when Moscow seized Crimea. From that moment, Russia was no longer a supplier, it was the enemy. And Ukraine realized something crucial. If it wanted security, it couldn't rely on anyone else. It needed its own missile industry. Kyiv leaned on its Soviet inheritance, Yuzhnoye Design Bureau in Dnipro. Yuzhmash, now Pivdenmash, with decades of rocket experience. Luch Design Bureau, specializing in long-range systems. By 2018, Ukraine had tested and deployed the Vilka, a guided 300mm rocket. By 2021, the R-360 Neptune anti-ship missile entered service. They weren't perfect. Funding was limited, timelines slipped, and the ambitious RIM-2 ballistic missile program repeatedly stalled. But progress was real. By the start of 2022, Ukraine had the skeleton of a missile industry, small, fragile, but alive. Act 3. War and setback. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, Ukraine's missile dream met harsh reality. Moscow unleashed its own arsenal, thousands of cruise and ballistic missiles, and deliberately targeted Ukraine's missile infrastructure. Pivdenmash in Dnipro was bombed in late 2022. The Pavlorod chemical plant, critical for solid fuel production, was hit in May and November 2023, then again in 2024. Each strike delayed programs like RIM-2. Each explosion killed momentum. At the same time, Ukraine had no choice but to divert resources to the front. Factories that could have built missiles instead repaired tanks or churned out artillery shells. The dream of a missile arsenal seemed distant. But then came April 2022, and one event changed everything. Act 4. The Moskva. Ukraine fired 2 R-360 Neptune missiles at the Moskva, flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. The ship burned, then sank. A $750 million vessel, bristling with air defenses, destroyed by missiles designed and built in Ukraine. It was more than a military victory, it was proof. Ukraine's engineers could design weapons that worked and change the course of the war. From that moment, Ukraine knew missiles were its future. Act 5. Western firepower. In 2023, Kyiv's arsenal grew dramatically with Western aid. Britain and France delivered Storm Shadow and Scalpy cruise missiles, range 250 kilometers, price up to $2.5 million apiece. The results were spectacular. Strikes on Sevastopol port damaged a Russian submarine, a landing ship, and even the Black Sea Fleet headquarters. The message was clear. Russia's Fortress Crimea was not invulnerable. Then came the Americans. ATACMS missiles arrived in late 2023. Their debut strike destroyed 9 helicopters and killed dozens of Russian soldiers. President Zelenskyy declared, "They have performed very accurately." Ukraine now had a taste of long-range precision warfare, but 3 lessons quickly became obvious. Missiles changed the battlefield. Each strike on an airbase or depot crippled Russian logistics. Allies can't supply enough. Stocks were limited, production slow, politics cautious. Restrictions limit freedom. Some missiles couldn't be used against Russian soil. The conclusion: if Ukraine wanted true missile power, it needed to build its own arsenal, at scale, without restrictions. Act 6. The arsenal grows. By 2024, Ukraine was producing a wide family of new drones and mini-missiles. Lyuty, FP1, Ruta, Peklo. They weren't designed to level cities. Instead, they harassed. They ignited fires at refineries, disabled aircraft, and disrupted oil depots. Death by 1,000 cuts. But Ukraine wasn't stopping there. Act 7. The heavyweights. Long Neptune. In March 2025, President Zelenskyy announced a breakthrough, the Long Neptune. Range, 1,000 kilometers, 621 miles. Size, nearly 20 feet long, thicker and heavier than the original Neptune. Payload, enough to smash hardened targets. For the first time, Russian infrastructure deep inland, refineries, factories, logistics hubs, was within reach. Ukraine could now strike 4 times further than Storm Shadow, with weapons made entirely at home. Sapsan, Rim 2. Then came the Sapsan ballistic missile. Warhead, over 1,000 pounds. Range, 300 to 500 kilometers. Speed, more than Mach 4. Ballistic missiles are different from cruise missiles. They launch high, travel fast, and plunge onto targets with immense force. Even if detected, they're almost impossible to stop in time. Analysts believe Sapsan could rival, or even exceed, the American ATACMS. Larger warheads, faster speed, more destructive power, and, crucially, built in Ukraine. Flamingo FP5. The most surprising addition came from a private defense startup, the Flamingo FP5. Don't let the name fool you. Warhead, 1,150 kilograms, 2,500 pounds. Range, up to 3,000 kilometers, 1,860 miles. Production goal, 200 per month. Early test models even had a pink-tipped nose cone, a factory error that gave the missile its nickname. But behind the humor is a weapon of unprecedented power. Some analysts argue that if Ukraine can field 3,000 to 5,000 flamingos, it could cripple 25% of Russia's economy in days. That would make any future Russian aggression militarily and economically suicidal. Act 8. Strategy of strikes. Look at Ukraine's strikes over the last 2 years, and you see a clear strategy. Blind defenses, destroying S-300 and S-400 radars, cripple logistics, striking oil depots, air bases, and rail hubs, humiliated Russia, sinking ships, bombing fleet headquarters, posting drone footage of strikes. Every missile adds pressure, every explosion opens the door for the next attack. And, now with Long Neptune, Sapsan, and Flamingo in hand, Ukraine's campaign is entering a new phase.